Hey, this is Paul with MakeUseOf.com. And for the past month, I've been testing out and using the Insta360 RS. This is probably one of the most interesting and exciting action cameras of 2022. And at first glance, this looks like almost every other action camera out there. But it's not until you take it out of its quick release bracket and look at it a little closer that you realize this isn't like any other action camera. First, the battery detaches from the bottom, and then it splits apart. So this design first came out with the original 1R, which came out about 2 years ago now. They've got 3 lenses available, and with the twin edition that I'm reviewing today, we've got the 4K boost lens and the 5.7K 360 lens. And so compared to the 1R, the new 1RS brings a lot of new features that improve upon this modular design, making it a more effective and enjoyable tool for content creators. We've got a snappier and more efficient CPU that now supports in-camera flow state stabilization up to 4K 60 frames per second. This saves you from the need of having to process your clips separately within their app. You've also got the improved mounting bracket with better heat dissipation, which lets you swap to one of its 3 available lenses more quickly to change up your shot. You've also got a beefier 1445 milliamp battery compared to the original 1990 in the 1R. And that should give you about 10 to 20 minutes of extra recording time depending on the mode. Throughout this review, I'll be sharing a bunch of photo and video examples so you can see how well these 2 lenses perform. The results you can get, especially with good lighting, are pretty impressive. But as you can imagine with this modular design, there might be a few compromises that you should keep in mind, and I'll cover those as well. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to test out and review a couple other action cameras, but this is one of the only ones that I actually feel has a place among my other gear, something that I would actually want to take with me. The reason for that, again, is that modular design, which makes it more than just an action camera. To me, it's mostly felt like a small, rugged point-and-shoot camera that in seconds I can swap out and then get a completely different shot in 360 that none of my other cameras can do. More importantly, and I think this is often overlooked, this is actually a camera that encourages you to go out and shoot because of how fun and easy it is to use. More than I've wanted to in a while, I went out, I shot a lot with this, I edited a lot, and I actually uploaded a lot of content with this camera. And to me, that's kind of the point. The 4K edition comes with the newly introduced 48 megapixel 4K boost lens, which is also backward compatible with the original 1R. And because of its 48 megapixels, it's one of the highest spec and cheapest action cameras of 2022. When looking online at their site, it can be a little bit complicated because they've got so many different bundles, and within that, they've got so many different variation of kits. My twin edition Get Set kit comes with the 4K boost lens, the 5.7K 360 lens, as well as a 120 centimeter invisible selfie stick and a 64 gigabyte micro SD card. I use this setup for vlogging, traveling, riding my one wheel, and for more cinematic style shots too. For the same price as the twin edition, which comes with the boost lens and the 360 lens, that costs $549. You can also get the 1-inch edition, which substitutes the 360 lens for that 1-inch ultra wide. What's odd though is Insta360 also has a core bundle, which includes just this, no camera. And you might be thinking, well, that's not so weird. Well, what's weird is that's $269.99. So you save $30 by not getting this lens. Whatever bundle you do get, just don't get that one. If you just want the action camera and you don't care about the 1-inch ultra wide, or you don't care about the 360 lens, just go with the 4K boost bundle, which is $299, which again is cheaper than GoPro and the Osmo Action. I was recently in New York, so having a small compact camera like this was great to have because I was able to just walk around with it all day and I didn't really mind the weight. Throughout that trip, there were several events and venues I went to that you normally wouldn't be able to bring a DSLR, but because of how small this is, that wasn't an issue. For more of a point and shoot type of camera, I would use the 4K boost lens most. I shot most of my clips in log with manual settings and was impressed with its dynamic range and ease of color grading. Painting and tilting shots were very smooth and gimbal-like with minimal effort. But I think what's really cool about this setup is that you have the flexibility to switch between the lenses. So you can get 360 shots when you want and then switch back to your normal lens when you're not using it. That's really big to me because while I really like the kind of shots that you can get with a 360 lens, it has its time and place. It's not always the lens that you want to be using because even at 5.7K, it's not the sharpest and it's not going to be the best in low light. I've actually owned and used a couple dedicated 360 cameras, including the Insta360 1X. I mostly use them exclusively for real estate tours and the occasional concert. But aside from that, its clunky interface and of course it being limited to just 360 shooting, made me not really want to use it beyond just as a tool for work. But again, because of the flexibility of being able to switch it on and off when I want to, when it came to vlogging, the 360 lens was definitely one of my favorites. It's an awesome way to show your surroundings, tell a story, and do cool transitions. The thing is though, like I was saying, it's not the sharpest, so when you're playing it back on larger screens, especially zooming in and removing that fisheye look, you'll quickly notice that it lacks detail, especially compared to the shots on the 4K boost lens. Frame rates and modes are basically the same compared to the 2-year-old 1R. With its 4K boost lens, it can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, slow motion at 1080p 200 frames per second, 2.7K at 100. Switching to the 360 lens, you can shoot at 5.7K at 30 frames per second, and a rather limited 3K at 100 frames per second. And I'd probably never really use that because of how low res that is. It's unfortunate that competing options from DJI and GoPro have had 4K 120 for a while now. For those who want the sharpest and best looking slow motion, I could see that maybe being a deal breaker. But on the positive side, if you're a fan of that modular design, Insta360 has brought a number of improvements. Like we were saying, the new processor is more powerful and supports flow state stabilization in camera, supporting up to 4K 60 frames per second without needing post-processing in-app or with the Insta360 Studio on your computer. This is a big advantage over the 1R, which required it when it first came out. Depending on the number of clips and their lengths, this could be a very time-consuming process. If you're like me, that extra required step could be enough to deter you from wanting to shoot and edit those clips. Another improvement that might not seem as significant at first is the new mounting bracket. The 1RS is taller because of its beefier battery, and it won't work with the older 1R bracket, but that's not a bad thing. Compared to the traditional action camera bracket design, we now have a quick release button that when pressed lets us remove the camera from the side. This helps the process of switching lenses more quickly compared to the 1R, and so you'll be able to swap them out and get ready for your next shot more quickly. And for the most part, I would actually keep the camera in its case all the time, just because of the extra protection it gave it, as well as the ability to attach accessories at the bottom. On the topic of switching out lenses, it's easy enough to do, but it does require some focus and time. I found that I preferred to stop what I was doing and stand still for a few moments just to make sure I didn't drop anything in the process. The 360 lens definitely is not one that you want to drop. It would have been nice for the Insta360 to include a dedicated case and cover for the 4K boost lens, just as they have for the 360 lens. Overall, the Insta360 RS feels very snappy. It turns on quickly and is ready to record within a few moments. You can also start a recording right away while it's off by pressing the record button at the top. I did have a few times where the camera just wasn't quite quick enough to catch the action before it passed, but for the most part it was plenty quick. Photos are good out of this, especially for an action camera, but the downside is the speed at which they're taken. Shooting 48 megapixel DNGs takes several seconds from when you hit the shutter button, having to stand still, and then waiting for the photo to be processed. If you're just trying to snap away or catch fast action, you'll probably prefer using your phone. One of the biggest downsides again to this modular design is the small touchscreen, but the fact that we only have one of them. Compared to other action cameras with larger 16:9 screens, this 1.3-inch screen provides about 1/3 of the actual playback area. For framing yourself, it'll get the job done. I also watch back some of my recorded clips and scrub through them too, but again, one of the biggest downsides was being able to see the detail and being able to properly set my exposure because it's kind of hard to tell on such a small screen. But even though it's small, for the most part, it's easy to navigate and very responsive. If you have a lot of mixed lighting, going from bright or dark scenes really quickly, or you just don't want to mess with the manual settings, Insta's auto settings, especially in video HDR, which does limit you to only being able to change your white balance, are pretty good. It has room for improvement, especially when exposing for faces, as it does seem to expose for the sky more than your face. Also new, you have quick modes that you can access by clicking the Q button. There are 5 in total that you can customize. The magnifying glass lets you change your focal length on the 4K boost lens, but not the 360 lens. You can choose from 4 presets between 20mm and 29mm. You can also manually zoom up to 50mm, but it does have a very digital look that I'll only use as a last resort. Their flow state stabilization again continues to be very good. The biggest area that I wish it would improve, that a lot of other smaller form factor cameras like this still struggle with, but some do a little bit better of a job, is with that bobbing motion of when you're walking. Especially when I have the lens a little bit more zoomed in shooting linear, it's a bit more noticeable, but if I went a little bit wider to 60mm, it'd be better. But when you use this while biking or riding a one wheel, you'll be really impressed with how smooth it can be. And so the main takeaway is this is a very capable action camera, but it's more than that. If you want a camera that is not only rugged, small form factor, and can take those action shots, but can also be modular and swapped out for a 360 lens when you want to get some of those shots, that's why you choose this setup. It does have a couple compromises compared to dedicated action cameras, the lack of 4K 120 FPS, as well as the smaller screen and the lack of a second screen. The modular design has been improved and is a lot more useful compared to the original 1R. It allows the 1RS to be more than just your typical action camera, and if you don't mind those drawbacks, this is way more exciting. So thanks for checking out this review. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments down below. Until the next one, we'll catch you later.